The mare's labored breathing had drawn Isaac Vance across the moonlit pasture at 3 in the morning, his boots crunching through frost-laden grass, as September's chill settled over Jamestown, California in 1879. What he found in the far corner of the breeding stable stopped him cold. A woman curled on her side in the straw, her dark hair matted with sweat and dirt, her arms wrapped protectively around a still wet foal that couldn't have been more than an hour old. The mare stood nearby, nostrils flaring, her eyes wild with the primal confusion of first-time motherhood. Isaac approached slowly, his rancher's instincts telling him something was deeply wrong with this picture. The woman's dress was torn at the hem, her feet bare and bleeding, and even in sleep, her face was drawn with exhaustion that went beyond physical. The foal nestled against her was breathing steadily, its spindly legs tucked beneath its damp body, and somehow the woman had managed to clear its airways and rub it down with handfuls of straw. She had helped birth this animal, he realized, then collapsed beside it. He shrugged out of his heavy wool coat and draped it carefully over both woman and foal, tucking it around her shoulders. She stirred at his touch, and her eyes flew open with the startled terror of a hunted creature. They were the deepest brown he had ever seen, rimmed with red from crying or smoke or both. "Easy now," Isaac said softly, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "You are safe here. This is my ranch and nobody is going to hurt you." The woman pushed herself up on one elbow, her free hand instinctively reaching for the foal. Her gaze darted past Isaac to the open stable door, calculating distances, assessing threats. She was young, probably not yet 25, with delicate features that would have been beautiful if not for the hollows beneath her cheekbones and the purple bruise blooming along her jaw. "The mare," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "She was in distress. I heard her from the road." The foal was breech. Isaac looked at the mare, then back at the woman. A breech birth in a first-time mother was often fatal for both animals. This foal should not be alive, should not be breathing peacefully under his coat with this mysterious stranger's hand resting on its neck. "You know horses," he said. "It was not a question. My father bred them, before." She did not elaborate on before what, but her eyes went distant and pained. She tried to sit up fully and gasped, her hand flying to her ribs. "You are hurt." Isaac kept his voice calm despite the anger rising in his chest at the thought of someone striking a woman hard enough to crack ribs. "Let me help you to the house. My sister lives with me. She can tend your injuries and get you some proper food. I cannot pay you." The words came out fierce and proud despite her obvious vulnerability. "I have nothing. I did not ask you to pay. You saved my foal. That mare is one of my best breeding stock and this is her first. You gave me a gift tonight whether you meant to or not." Isaac stood and offered his hand. "My name is Isaac Vance. This is the Double V Ranch, 500 acres of the stubbornest cattle and finest horses in Tuolumne County." She stared at his hand for a long moment before placing her smaller one in it. Her palm was rough with calluses, the hands of someone used to hard work. "Catherine Dalton," she said quietly. "Kate." He helped her to her feet and she swayed dangerously. Isaac caught her before she could fall, and even through the pain and exhaustion, she stiffened at the contact of a strange man's hands on her waist. "I will not hurt you," he said again, and something in his tone must have convinced her because she allowed him to support her weight as they made their slow way out of the stable. Behind them, the mare nickered softly to her foal, and Kate turned her head to look back. "She needs to nurse soon," Kate said, "within the next hour, and the afterbirth should be checked to make sure it came out complete. I will see to it after I get you settled." Isaac guided her across the yard toward the 2-story ranch house that his grandfather had built 40 years earlier, when California was still wild territory, and Jamestown was nothing but a gold rush camp. My sister Marion is going to have about 1,000 questions. Kate said nothing, but he felt her trembling through the thin fabric of her dress. Shock was setting in now that the crisis with the foal had passed. He needed to get her warm and fed before she collapsed again. The house was dark except for the lamp he had left burning in the kitchen. Isaac settled Kate into a chair at the scarred wooden table and went to stoke the fire in the cast iron stove. The warmth seemed to revive her slightly, and she pulled his coat tighter around her shoulders. "Marion," Isaac called up the stairs, "I need you down here." There was a thump from the second floor, followed by footsteps. Marion appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing a flannel nightgown and a thick shawl, her light brown hair in a long braid over one shoulder. She took one look at Kate and her eyes widened. "Good Lord, Isaac, what happened?" "Found her in the stable with the new foal. She helped with a breech birth, but she is hurt and half-starved from the look of her." Isaac was already pumping water into a kettle. "Can you get her cleaned up and into some proper clothes? I need to check on the mare." Marion crossed to Kate immediately, her practical nature taking over. At 32, she had been managing the household since their mother's death 5 years ago, and nothing much rattled her. "Come on, dear. Let us get you upstairs and out of that ruined dress." "Isaac, bring up hot water when it is ready." Kate allowed herself to be led away, and Isaac heard their footsteps on the stairs followed by the sound of Marion's bedroom door closing. He filled the kettle and set it to heat, then leaned against the counter and ran both hands through his dark hair. At 28, he had been running the Double V for 3 years since his father's stroke had left him partially paralyzed. It was a good life, hard but honest, and he had never wanted anything more than to build the ranch into something he could be proud of. But finding a woman sleeping beside a newborn foal, that was something new. He carried the hot water upstairs when it was ready and knocked on Marion's door. She opened it just wide enough to take the pitcher, and he caught a glimpse of Kate sitting on the edge of the bed, her torn dress replaced by one of Marion's nightgowns. The bruise on her jaw looked worse in the lamplight. "The ribs are badly bruised but probably not broken," Marion said quietly. "She has other injuries too, old ones. Isaac, someone has been hurting this girl for a while." His jaw tightened. "Did she say who?" "She has not said much of anything. But she keeps watching the door like she expects someone to break it down." Marion's blue eyes were troubled. Whatever she is running from, it scared her badly enough to walk through the night on bare feet. "Let her rest. We will get the full story in the morning." Isaac turned toward the stairs, then paused. "Make sure she knows she is safe here. Whatever is hunting her stays outside my fence line." He spent the next hour in the stable, checking the mare and her foal. Kate had been right about everything. The afterbirth was intact, and the foal was nursing strongly, its small tail flicking with contentment. The mare had calmed considerably now that her baby was on its feet and feeding. Isaac ran his hand along her neck, murmuring praise. "You did good, girl, and so did your unexpected midwife." The foal was a filly, long-legged and strong despite the difficult birth. She would be a beauty when she grew into those legs. He made a mental note to ask Kate what she thought would be a fitting name, then caught himself. He was already assuming she would stay long enough to have opinions about the livestock. But something told him Kate Dalton was not going anywhere for a while, whether by choice or necessity. When he finally returned to the house, the sky was beginning to lighten with the false dawn that came before true morning. He had ranch work to do, cattle to check and fences to ride, but exhaustion was pulling at him. He allowed himself 2 hours of sleep on the sofa in the front room, his boots still on in case of emergency. Marion woke him with a touch on his shoulder and a cup of strong coffee. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the smell of frying bacon filled the air. "She is still asleep," Marion said before he could ask. "I checked on her an hour ago. She barely moved all night." Isaac sat up and accepted the coffee gratefully. "What do you think happened to her?" "Nothing good." Marion settled into the armchair across from him, her own cup cradled in both hands. "The bruises are in different stages of healing. The one on her jaw is fresh, maybe 2 days old, but there are older ones on her arms and ribs. And Isaac, there are marks on her wrists like she was tied up." The coffee turned bitter in his mouth. "We need to contact the sheriff." "And tell him what?" "That a woman showed up on our property and we think someone hurt her. She is an adult, and unless she makes a complaint, there is nothing Tom Harrison can do." Marion shook her head. "Besides, she is terrified. Pushing her to talk to the law might send her running again, and next time she might not be lucky enough to find a safe place to collapse. So we do nothing. We give her time. We let her know she is safe and fed and welcome to stay as long as she needs. And we wait for her to trust us enough to tell us the truth." Marion's expression was firm. "You know I am right." He did know, but that did not make it easier to accept. Isaac had never been good at patience when he saw a problem that needed solving. But Marion understood people better than he did, understood the kind of patience required to heal wounds that went deeper than bruises. "All right," he said. "We do it your way, but if someone comes looking for her, then we deal with it together." Marion stood and headed back toward the kitchen. "Now come eat breakfast before it gets cold. You have cattle to tend, and I am not running this ranch by myself while you moon over a mysterious woman in the guest room." "I am not mooning," Isaac protested, but Marion just laughed. Kate appeared in the doorway while they were finishing breakfast, dressed in one of Marion's day dresses that hung loose on her thinner frame. Her dark hair was clean and braided, and the haunted look in her eyes had softened slightly after a night of sleep. "Good morning," Marion said warmly. "Come sit down. There is plenty of food." Kate hesitated in the doorway, and Isaac saw her taking in the scene. The comfortable kitchen, the well-worn furniture, the easy familiarity between siblings. Her eyes lingered on the rifle hanging above the door, then moved to the windows as if checking escape routes. "You are safe here," Isaac said again, and her gaze snapped to his. "Nobody is going to hurt you, and nobody is going to make you do anything you do not want to do. That includes talking about whatever brought you to my stable last night." Something shifted in her expression, a tiny easing of the rigid control she was holding over herself. She crossed to the table and sat in the chair Marion indicated, her movements careful as if her ribs were paining her. Marion set a plate in front of her loaded with eggs, bacon, and thick slices of bread. Kate stared at it for a moment, then looked up with eyes that were suddenly bright with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "I cannot remember the last time someone was kind to me." "Then they were fools," Marion said briskly, settling into her own chair. "Now eat before Isaac starts asking you 100 questions about the foal. He has been impossible since he saw what you did." Kate picked up her fork with hands that shook slightly. "The foal, she is well." "She is perfect," Isaac said. "Already nursing and steady on her feet. The mare has taken to motherhood like she was born to it." He paused. "You saved them both. A breech birth like that, I would have lost at least the foal, maybe both of them." "I heard the mare from the road," Kate said softly, taking small bites of egg. "I was walking through the night, trying to get as far from Sacramento as I could. The sound, it was so desperate. I could not just leave her. Sacramento. That was 3 days' hard ride north, much longer on foot." Isaac exchanged a glance with Marion. "You walked from Sacramento?" Marion asked gently. Kate nodded, not meeting their eyes. I took what I could carry and left everything else behind. By the second day, my shoes were falling apart, so I discarded them. I had to keep moving. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. He would have come after me if I stopped. Isaac's hands clenched into fists under the table. Who? For a long moment he thought she would not answer. She set down her fork and stared at her plate, her jaw tight. When she finally spoke, the words came out flat and empty of emotion. My husband. Former husband, if God is merciful and grants me that mercy even without proper legal channels. You are married. Marion's voice was carefully neutral. I was. To Martin Crawford, a businessman in Sacramento. My father arranged the marriage 2 years ago when his horse breeding business failed. Martin promised to pay off my father's debts in exchange for my hand. Kate's laugh was bitter. What he did not mention was that he enjoyed hurting things weaker than himself. His first wife died under mysterious circumstances. I was too young and foolish to ask questions. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture that made Isaac's blood boil. He hurt you. Regularly. Especially when he had been drinking, which was most evenings. Kate finally looked up, and the pain in her eyes was mixed with defiance. I endured it for 2 years. I told myself I was fulfilling my duty, honoring the agreement my father made. But then my father died 3 months ago, and Martin said the debt was paid. He said he was free to dispose of me as he saw fit. Marion reached across the table and took Kate's hand. What happened? He told me he had arranged to sell me to a brothel owner in San Francisco. He said I had lost whatever value I once had, but there were men who would pay to use me regardless. Kate's voice shook now, the careful control cracking. He locked me in our bedroom to wait for the transaction to be completed, but the lock was old and I had been working on it for weeks. When I heard him leave the house 3 nights ago, I broke free and ran. Dear Lord, Marion breathed. Isaac stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He needed to move, needed to do something with the rage flooding through him. A man who would beat his wife was bad enough, but to sell her like livestock, that was beyond comprehension. You are safe here, he said again, pacing to the window and back. Martin Crawford can come all the way to Jamestown if he wants, but he will not lay a hand on you again. I give you my word on that. Kate was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. You do not understand. Martin has money and connections. He knows the judges in Sacramento. If he finds me, he can claim I am a runaway wife and the law will be on his side. Then we make sure he does not find you, Marion said firmly. Jamestown is 3 days from Sacramento and nobody here knows you. We will say you are a cousin from back east, come to help with the household. Martin Crawford would have no reason to look for you here. Why would you do this? Kate asked, her voice breaking. You do not know me. I could be lying about all of it. Isaac returned to the table and crouched beside her chair so he could look her in the eyes. You saved my foal in the middle of the night when you had every reason to keep running and save yourself. You are not a liar, Kate Dalton. You are a woman who deserves better than what life has given her so far. She stared at him, and something passed between them in that moment, a recognition that went deeper than words. Isaac felt it like a physical jolt, this sudden awareness of her not just as a victim to be protected, but as a woman, complex and brave and beautiful despite everything that had tried to break her. I do not have anywhere else to go, Kate said finally. Then stay here, Marion said. Stay as long as you need. We could use the help around the ranch, and heaven knows Isaac needs someone who actually understands horses instead of just bossing them around. That drew a small smile from Kate, and Isaac realized it was the first time he had seen her expression soften into anything approaching happiness. It transformed her face, giving him a glimpse of who she must have been before Martin Crawford had tried to destroy her spirit. I can work, Kate said. I am good with horses. My father taught me everything he knew before he lost the business. Then it is settled. Isaac stood and headed for the door. I need to check the cattle, but when I get back this afternoon, you can show me what you think of the breeding stock. Marion, you will need to alter some dresses to fit her properly. Already planning on it, Marion said. Now go on before you start giving orders about everything else in the house too. Isaac grabbed his hat from the peg by the door and stepped out into the bright September morning. The sky was cloudless blue, and the air carried the crisp promise of autumn. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly, trying to settle the tangle of emotions in his chest. He had built a good life here at the Double V. After his father's stroke, it would have been easy to sell the ranch and move to San Francisco or Sacramento where opportunities were more plentiful. But this land was in his blood, had been in his family's blood since his grandfather first claimed it in 1839. He loved the harsh beauty of the California foothills, the way the seasons shifted from golden summer to green winter, the constant challenge of making a living from cattle and horses. But there had always been something missing, some empty space he could not quite define. He had courted a few women over the years, but nothing had ever felt right. Marion teased him about being too particular, said he was waiting for some imaginary perfect woman who did not exist. And then, Kate Dalton had appeared in his stable, sleeping beside a newborn foal with her bare feet bleeding and her eyes full of ghosts. Isaac shook his head and started toward the pasture where his cattle grazed. He was being a fool. Kate was running from an abusive husband, traumatized and vulnerable. The last thing she needed was another man looking at her with wanting in his eyes. She needed safety and stability and time to heal. But as he rode out to check the fence lines, he could not stop thinking about the way she had looked at him in the kitchen, like he was something solid she could hold onto in a world that had tried to sweep her away. The day passed in the familiar rhythms of ranch work. Isaac mended a section of fence that the cattle had knocked down, checked the water sources in each pasture, and spent an hour working with a young gelding who was still learning to accept a saddle. The physical labor helped settle his mind, gave him something concrete to focus on besides the woman currently staying in his guest room. When he returned to the house in late afternoon, he found Kate in the stable with the mare and foal. She had changed into clothes more suitable for barn work, an old pair of Marion's trousers and a work shirt that was still too big on her. Her dark hair was tied back with a ribbon, and she was running her hands over the foal with the sure touch of someone who knew exactly what she was looking for. "How is she?" Isaac asked from the doorway. Kate looked up, and he saw that some of the wariness had faded from her expression. Being around horses seemed to calm her, give her a purpose that went beyond simply surviving. "She is perfect," Kate said. "Strong legs, good conformation, excellent temperament. What are you calling her?" "I was hoping you might have a suggestion. You brought her into this world after all." Kate turned back to the foal, her hand gentle on the animal's neck. "Dawn," she said softly. "Because she was born in the darkest part of the night, but she survived to see morning." Isaac stepped into the stable, moving slowly so as not to startle either horse or woman. "Dawn it is, and the mare is Starlight, so it fits." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching as Dawn nuzzled against her mother's side. The mare nickered softly, content now that the crisis of birth had passed. "You have good horses here," Kate said. "Your breeding program is solid, but I noticed that bay gelding in the far stall. The one with the white blaze. He favors his left foreleg." "I know. I have been trying to figure out what is wrong with him for 2 weeks. The farrier checked his hooves, found nothing. No heat or swelling in the leg, but he is definitely off." Kate moved to the bay's stall without hesitation. The gelding watched her approach with ears pricked forward, and she spoke to him in a low, soothing voice as she let herself in. Isaac watched as she ran her hands down the horse's leg, probing gently, her fingers searching for something the farrier had missed. "Here," she said finally, pressing on a point just below the knee. The gelding flinched and pulled away. "He has a stone bruise, probably stepped on a rock just right to bruise the frog of his hoof, but it is not showing up on the surface. You need to pack the hoof with a drawing poultice for a week and keep him on soft ground." Isaac shook his head in amazement. "How did you see that? My father was a perfectionist. He taught me to feel what I could not see." Kate gave the gelding a final pat and let herself out of the stall. "You have 16 horses here, and from what I can tell, all of them are in excellent condition except for this one minor issue. Someone has been taking good care of them. I try. But my expertise is cattle, not horses. I only keep the breeding stock because my grandfather started the program, and it seemed a shame to let it die out." Isaac leaned against the stall door, studying her. "If you wanted to take over the horse operation, I would be glad to have the help." Kate's eyes widened. "You would trust me with your horses. After knowing me for less than a day, you saved Starlight and Dawn. You spotted a problem with the bay that I missed entirely, and something tells me you need a reason to stay here beyond just hiding from your past." Isaac held her gaze. "I am offering you a purpose, Kate, a reason to get up in the morning that has nothing to do with Martin Crawford or what he tried to make you." She was quiet for a long moment, and he could see her weighing the offer, testing it for traps or hidden costs. But finally, she nodded. "All right. I will do it. But Isaac," she paused, searching for words, "I am not good at trusting people anymore. If I seem suspicious or distant, it is not personal. I understand. And Kate," he waited until she looked at him, "you do not owe me anything, not gratitude, not loyalty, nothing. You work with the horses because you want to, and you leave if you want to. This is your choice, always." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they seemed to be the good kind. "Nobody has ever said that to me before." "Then they were all fools," Isaac said, echoing Marion's earlier words. "Now come on. My sister has been cooking all afternoon, and if we do not show up on time for dinner, she is liable to feed it to the pigs out of spite." Kate laughed, a real laugh this time, and the sound of it did something to Isaac's heart that he was not quite ready to examine. They walked back to the house together through the golden late afternoon light, and for just a moment, Isaac let himself imagine that this could become normal. Coming home to find Kate in his stable, working with his horses, laughing at his jokes. But he pushed the thought away as quickly as it came. Kate needed time and space to heal, and he needed to remember that. Dinner was a lively affair, with Marion determined to draw Kate out of her shell through sheer force of personality. She told stories about growing up on the ranch, about Isaac's disastrous first attempt at breaking a horse when he was 12, about the time their father had accidentally let all the chickens loose in the house. Kate listened and smiled and slowly began to contribute her own stories. She talked about learning to ride before she could properly walk, about the prize stallion her father had bred who went on to sire champions throughout California, about the traveling horse shows she had attended as a girl. "You should enter Dawn in the county fair next summer," Kate said to Isaac. "With proper training, she could be a real contender in the young stock division." "I have never bothered with the fairs," Isaac admitted. "Always seemed like more trouble than it was worth." "That is because you think of horses as livestock, not as art," Kate said, and there was a spark of passion in her eyes now that had been entirely absent before. "A truly great horse is both, a perfect combination of form and function. And you have the foundation here to breed truly great horses if you wanted to. Then teach me, Isaac said. Show me what you see when you look at them. They spent the next hour after dinner talking about bloodlines and conformation, about which mares to breed to which stallions, about long-term goals for improving the stock. Marion excused herself to work on her sewing, but Isaac could see the satisfied smile on her face as she left. She had wanted him to find someone who shared his love of the ranch, someone who could be a true partner in the work. But Kate was not here to be his partner. She was here to heal, and he needed to remember that no matter how much he enjoyed her company. As the days turned into weeks, Kate settled into life at the Double V with a determination that was both impressive and heartbreaking. She threw herself into working with the horses, spending long hours in the stable and pastures. She evaluated every animal in Isaac's breeding program, made detailed notes about strengths and weaknesses, developed training schedules for the younger stock. She also made herself useful around the ranch in countless other ways. She helped Marion with the cooking and cleaning, mended tack in the evenings, even learned to handle a rifle well enough to shoot the occasional rattlesnake that wandered too close to the house. But Isaac noticed that she never fully relaxed. She startled at sudden noises, watched the road whenever a rider approached, flinched if someone moved too quickly near her. The fear that Martin Crawford had planted in her went bone deep, and it was going to take more than a few weeks of safety to root it out. October came, and with it the first real cold snaps that warned of winter approaching. Isaac spent long days bringing the cattle down from the high pastures, sorting out which animals to sell and which to keep for breeding. Kate was always there to help, working alongside him without complaint even when the work was dirty or difficult. They fell into an easy partnership that felt natural, like they had been working together for years instead of weeks. Isaac found himself watching for her smile, listening for her laugh, looking forward to the evenings when they would sit by the fire and talk about the horses or the ranch or nothing in particular. Marion noticed, of course. She cornered him one evening in the barn while Kate was in the house helping with dinner. "You are falling for her," Marion said without preamble. Isaac checked the cinch on his saddle with more attention than it needed. "I do not know what you are talking about." "Do not lie to me, little brother. I have watched you moon over that girl for 6 weeks now, and before you deny it again, yes, you are definitely mooning." He sighed and turned to face her. "What do you want me to say? That I care about her? Of course I do. That I enjoy her company? Obviously. That I think about her more than I should? Guilty." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "But Marion, she is running from a man who beat her and tried to sell her. The last thing she needs is another man making demands on her." "Who said anything about demands?" Marion crossed her arms. "I am talking about feelings, Isaac. About the fact that you look at her like she hung the moon, and she looks at you like you are the first safe place she has found in years. She looks at me like I am her employer and protector. Nothing more. Are you blind?" Marion shook her head in exasperation. "That girl lights up when you walk in the room. She laughs at your terrible jokes. She asks your opinion on everything even though she probably knows more about horses than you ever will. Those are not the actions of someone who only sees you as a boss." Isaac wanted to believe her, but he was terrified of misreading the situation and making Kate uncomfortable. "Even if you are right, and I am not saying you are, she is still legally married to Martin Crawford. Until that is resolved, anything between us would be improper at best." "Then help her resolve it. Take her to see a lawyer in town. Find out what her options are." Marion put a hand on his arm. "Kate is building a life here, but she is always going to be looking over her shoulder until she knows for certain that Martin cannot drag her back to Sacramento. Give her the tools to fight for her freedom, Isaac. And then, when she is ready, maybe you can both fight for something more." The idea took root in his mind and would not let go. 2 days later, he approached Kate while she was working with Dawn in the training pen. The foal was 2 months old now and already showing the signs of the champion Kate had predicted she would become. "I want to take you into town tomorrow," Isaac said without preamble, "to see a lawyer." Kate's hand stilled on Dawn's lead rope. "Why?" "Because you deserve to know what your legal options are. Because living in fear is no way to live. Because—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Because you deserve to be free, Kate. Truly free, not just hiding." She was quiet for so long he thought she would refuse. But finally she nodded. "All right. But Isaac, if Martin finds out where I am, then we deal with it together. You are not alone in this anymore." They rode into Jamestown the next morning under a clear autumn sky. The town was small, barely 1,000 people, but it had everything necessary for the surrounding ranches. A general store, a saloon, a church, a doctor, and a lawyer who had come west during the gold rush and decided to stay when the easy gold ran out. Theodore Marsh was in his 60s, with a shock of white hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He listened to Kate's story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a piece of paper. "This is a complicated situation," he said finally. "California law does allow for divorce, but the grounds are limited. Cruelty is recognized, but you would need proof. Witnesses, medical documentation, something concrete." "I have the scars," Kate said quietly. "And there were servants in the house who saw what Martin did. They might be willing to testify if they were assured they would not lose their positions. That would help." Theodore leaned back in his chair. "But here is the challenge. Martin Crawford has money and connections. If he decides to fight this, he can drag it out for years. And in the meantime, as your legal husband, he has the right to demand your return." Kate's face went pale. "So there is nothing I can do." "I did not say that." Theodore smiled slightly. "California is a big state, and Tuolumne County is a long way from Sacramento. If you were to file for divorce here, claiming abandonment or cruelty, and if Mr. Crawford were difficult to locate for the purpose of serving papers, well, these things can take time to resolve. Time during which you would be living respectably under the protection of the Vance family, establishing yourself as a valuable member of the community." Isaac caught on immediately. "You are saying we make it difficult for him to find her." "I am saying that judges in small counties like ours tend to be sympathetic to women who have been mistreated, especially when they have established community ties. If Kate were to live here for 6 months, a year, become known as a hard-working member of the Vance household, it would be much harder for Crawford to simply show up and demand her return." Theodore looked at Kate. "I am willing to file the papers if you are willing to take the risk." "What risk?" Kate asked. "That Crawford finds out and comes looking for you, that he makes trouble, that this all becomes very public and unpleasant." Theodore's expression was serious. "I will not lie to you, Miss Dalton. This could get ugly, but it is your best chance at true freedom." Kate looked at Isaac, and he saw the fear in her eyes warring with desperate hope. He reached over and took her hand, not caring that Theodore was watching. "Whatever you decide, I am with you," Isaac said. "If you want to file the papers, we will face whatever comes. If you want to wait, we will wait. This is your choice." She squeezed his hand and he felt the tremor running through her, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. "File the papers. I want to be free." Theodore nodded approvingly. "Very well. I will begin the process immediately. With your permission, I will also make some discreet inquiries about Crawford's activities in Sacramento. The more information we have, the better prepared we will be if he does come looking." They left the lawyer's office an hour later with papers to sign and a plan in place. Kate was quiet on the ride back to the ranch, but Isaac could sense something had shifted in her. She sat straighter in the saddle, held her head higher. For the first time since he had found her in his stable, she looked like someone who believed she had a future worth fighting for. "Thank you," she said as they approached the ranch gates, "for taking me to see Theodore, for supporting me in this, for everything. You do not need to thank me." "Yes, I do." She pulled her horse to a stop and turned to face him. "Isaac, I need you to understand something. When I ran from Sacramento, I was not trying to survive. I was trying to die. I thought if I could just walk far enough, fast enough, eventually I would collapse somewhere and that would be the end of it." His chest tightened. "Kate." But then I heard Starlight crying and something in me could not ignore it. I had to help her. I had to save something, even if I could not save myself. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "And then you found me, and you covered me with your coat like I was worth protecting. Like I was worth something. Nobody has made me feel that way in so long, Isaac. So yes, I need to thank you because you gave me a reason to want to live again." Isaac dismounted and moved to her horse's side, reaching up to help her down. When her feet touched the ground, he did not let go. They stood there in the late afternoon light, closer than they had ever been, and Isaac could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. "You were always worth something," he said softly. "Martin Crawford tried to convince you otherwise because he is a small, cruel man who gets his power from making other people feel weak. But he was wrong, Kate. You are strong and brave and talented. You are kind to animals and quick to laugh despite everything that has tried to break you. You are worth everything." A tear slipped down her cheek and he reached up to brush it away with his thumb. The gesture was intimate, more intimate than anything they had shared before, and he saw her breath catch. "Isaac," she whispered, and the way she said his name made something in his chest crack open. He wanted to kiss her so badly it hurt. Wanted to pull her close and promise that he would keep her safe forever, that nothing bad would ever touch her again. But he had promised himself he would give her space, time to heal, and he could not break that promise now even if every instinct was screaming at him to close the distance between them. Instead, he stepped back and released her, putting proper distance between them once more. "We should get back," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Marion will worry if we are late for dinner." Something flickered across Kate's face, disappointment maybe, but she nodded and turned toward the house. They walked in silence, and Isaac cursed himself for being a coward. But he knew he had made the right choice. Kate needed to be free before she could choose to be with anyone, needed to know that any relationship she entered was truly her choice and not just another form of dependency. But as they sat down to dinner that night, he caught her watching him with an expression he could not quite read. And when their hands brushed reaching for the same serving dish, the jolt of electricity between them was undeniable. Marion noticed, of course, and she smiled into her plate like someone who knew a secret. November brought cold rain that turned the pastures to mud and kept everyone close to the house. Kate used the time to work with the younger horses in the covered arena Isaac's grandfather had built decades ago. She had a gift for training, a patience and intuition that brought out the best in even the most skittish animals. Isaac found excuses to watch her work, standing at the arena rail while she put Dawn through her paces or worked on groundwork with the yearlings. She moved with unconscious grace, her body language clear and calm, and the horses responded to her like she was speaking their language. "You are staring again," Marion said one afternoon, appearing at his elbow with 2 cups of coffee. Isaac accepted the cup without taking his eyes off Kate. "She is amazing with them. I have never seen anything like it." "I was not talking about the horses." Marion sipped her coffee. "When are you going to tell her how you feel?" when she is free to make her own choices without worrying that I am just another man trying to control her life. You are an idiot if you think she does not already know, and an even bigger idiot if you think she does not feel the same way." Marion shook her head. "That girl watches you like you are the sun she orbits around. She lights up when you walk in a room. She asks for your opinion even when she already knows the answer because she wants to hear your voice. Those are not the actions of someone who sees you as just a protector or employer." Isaac finally tore his gaze away from Kate. "What if you are wrong? What if I push too hard and she runs? Then you let her go, because that would mean she was not ready." "But Isaac, you cannot protect her from life forever. At some point, she has to choose what she wants her future to look like, and I think if you give her the chance, she might choose you." Before Isaac could respond, Kate finished with the yearling and started toward them. Her face was flushed from exertion, her eyes bright with the satisfaction of good work completed. "Did you see that?" she asked Isaac. "He picked up the correct lead on the first try. Last week he was fighting me every time." "You have a gift," Isaac said, meaning it. "These horses are lucky to have you," she smiled, and it was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "I am the lucky one. This is the first time in 2 years I have felt like myself, like the person I was before Martin." "You are better than the person you were before," Isaac said. "You are stronger. You survived something that would have broken most people." Kate's smile softened into something more serious. "I could not have survived without you, both of you," she added, glancing at Marion. "You gave me a place to heal, a purpose beyond just existing." "I will never be able to repay that." "We do not want repayment," Marion said firmly. "We want you to be happy. That is all that matters." Kate looked between them, her eyes suspiciously bright. "I am happy. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I am actually happy." That night after dinner, Isaac and Kate sat together on the porch despite the cold. She had wrapped herself in a thick shawl, and he had built up the fire in the outdoor hearth that his grandfather had constructed for evenings just like this. "Tell me about your family," Kate said. "About what it was like growing up here." So Isaac told her stories. About learning to ride before he could properly walk, about helping his grandfather build the arena when he was 10 years old, about the year the river flooded and they had to rescue half the herd from drowning. He told her about his mother, who had died of pneumonia 5 years ago, and his father, who still lived in a cottage on the property but was too frail now to do much more than give advice. "You are lucky," Kate said softly, "to have roots like that, to know exactly where you belong in the world." "You belong here now too," Isaac said, "if you want to." She turned to look at him, and in the firelight her eyes were very dark. "Do you really mean that?" "I have never meant anything more." He wanted to say more, wanted to tell her everything he was feeling, but he held back. Not yet. Not until she was truly free. But Kate was not content to let it rest. She shifted closer on the bench they shared, close enough that her shoulder touched his. "Isaac, I need to tell you something. And I need you to just listen, not interrupt, because if you interrupt, I might lose my courage." He nodded, his heart suddenly racing. "I know I came here running from Martin. I know I was broken and scared and barely holding myself together. And I know that you and Marion took me in out of kindness, gave me a place to heal without expecting anything in return." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a safe place to hide. It became home. And you stopped being just my protector. You became, well, you became everything." Isaac's breath caught in his chest. "I watch you with the animals and see the gentleness in you. I listen to you talk about the ranch and hear the love you have for this land. I see how you care for your sister and your father, how you treat everyone with respect regardless of their station. And I think about how you covered me with your coat that first night, how you looked at me like I was worth saving even when I was at my lowest. Her voice broke slightly. "I am falling in love with you, Isaac Vance. I think I have been falling since that first morning in the kitchen when you told me I did not owe you anything. And I needed you to know, even if nothing can happen until the divorce is final, even if you do not feel the same way, I needed you to know." For a moment, Isaac could not breathe, could not think. And then he was reaching for her, pulling her into his arms, and she came willingly. He held her close, feeling her heart racing against his chest, and he thought he might burst from the sheer joy flooding through him. "Kate," he said into her hair, "I have been in love with you since the day I found you in my stable, maybe even before that, maybe from the moment I saw you sleeping beside that foal with your hand on her neck, protecting her even though you could barely protect yourself. You are the strongest, bravest, most remarkable woman I have ever met, and I will wait as long as it takes for you to be free so I can court you properly, and if you will have me, make you my wife." She pulled back just enough to look up at him, and the expression on her face was incandescent with happiness. "You love me, more than I thought possible, more than I have words for." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "I want to kiss you so badly right now, but I also want to do this right. I want to wait until you are free, until there is no question that you are choosing this because you want it, not because you feel obligated or dependent." Kate laughed, the sound bright and clear as bells. "You are the most frustratingly honorable man I have ever met, but I love you for it. I love you for everything." They sat there by the fire, holding each other, making quiet plans for a future that suddenly seemed bright and possible. The divorce would take time, possibly months, but they had time now. They had found each other, and nothing was going to take that away. December came, and with it Theodore Marsh's first report from Sacramento. Martin Crawford had indeed discovered his wife's disappearance and was furious. He had made inquiries throughout the city, but had not yet thought to look as far south as Jamestown. Theodore advised that they maintain caution, but said the divorce proceedings were moving forward smoothly. Kate received the news with visible relief. She was growing stronger every day, more confident in herself and her place at the Double V. She and Isaac were careful to maintain propriety, but everyone could see the way they gravitated toward each other, the way they found excuses to work together, the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. Marion was delighted, of course, and already planning a wedding for the following summer once the divorce was final. "Do not count your chickens before they hatch," Isaac warned her, but he was grinning. "Those chickens are already hatched and half-grown," Marion retorted. "You two are so obviously in love it is almost painful to watch. Just promise me you will wait until the divorce is final before you do anything foolish." "We promised," Kate said, appearing in the kitchen doorway. "And we meant it, though Isaac's definition of propriety is sometimes frustrating." "That is because he is a gentleman," Marion said. "Enjoy it while it lasts. Once you are married, he will probably go back to leaving his boots all over the floor and complaining about dinner." "I heard that," Isaac called from the other room. They celebrated Christmas quietly, just the three of them plus Isaac's father, who made the journey from his cottage for the occasion. James Vance was frail but still sharp, and he took an immediate liking to Kate. "You are good for my son," he told her after dinner. "I have not seen him this happy in years." "He is good for me too," Kate said softly. "He saved my life in more ways than one. Then you are fortunate to have found each other." James patted her hand with his gnarled fingers. "Life is too short to waste on anything less than real love. Do not let the legal complications stop you from building a life together. Find a way to be happy now, not someday." Kate thought about those words long after James had returned to his cottage. She and Isaac were being careful, honorable, doing everything right. But James was correct that life was uncertain. What if something happened before the divorce was final? What if Martin found a way to drag out the proceedings for years? Would she and Isaac waste all that time waiting for permission to be happy? She broached the subject with Isaac one evening in January as they were checking on the horses. A cold wind was blowing down from the mountains, and he had insisted she wear his coat over her own. "Your father said something to me at Christmas that I cannot stop thinking about," Kate said. "He said we should not wait to be happy, that we should find a way to build a life together now, not someday." Isaac finished hanging the feed bucket and turned to face her. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I know we want to do things properly, wait for the divorce to be final before we make any formal commitments. But Isaac, I am already committed to you in my heart. You are already my future, whether the law recognizes it or not." She took a deep breath. "I am saying that maybe we do not have to wait for everything. Maybe we can start building our life together now, in whatever ways we can." He closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. "Kate, I want nothing more than to make you my wife in every way that matters. But I also do not want to do anything that could jeopardize your divorce or your reputation. Then we are careful. We maintain separate bedrooms, keep up appearances for the sake of propriety. But Isaac, please, I need to know that you are truly mine. That this is real and not just some dream I will wake up from." He pulled her close, and she felt his heart beat strong and steady against her cheek. "You are not dreaming. This is real, Kate. You and me, we are real." "Then promise me something," she whispered. "Promise that when the divorce is final, you will marry me immediately. No long engagement, no waiting. Just us, making it official in front of God and everyone. I promise. The day that divorce decree arrives, I am taking you to the church and making you Kate Vance if I have to drag the preacher there by his collar." She laughed and tilted her head back to look at him. "I am going to hold you to that." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Kate felt like she was finally, truly coming home. The winter passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. Kate continued to build up the horse breeding program, developing a reputation throughout the county for her skill with training and evaluation. People started coming to the Double V specifically to get her opinion on their stock, and Isaac found himself turning away potential clients because Kate's schedule was so full. "You need to start charging for consultations," he told her one evening. "Word has spread about what you did with Dawn, and now every rancher in 3 counties wants your advice." "I am already living here rent-free," Kate protested. "I should be paying you for room and board. You work harder than any hand I have ever hired, and you have doubled the value of my breeding program in 4 months. Trust me, you are more than earning your keep." Isaac pulled out a ledger and showed her the numbers. "Look at this. I sold 3 yearlings last month for twice what I would have gotten a year ago, purely because you trained them. And I have 4 people on a waiting list to buy Dawn's full siblings when they are born." Kate stared at the figures in amazement. "I had no idea." "That is because you are too busy working to pay attention to the business side. But Kate, you are building something real here, something that could be your legacy, not just mine." He closed the ledger and looked at her seriously. "When we get married, I want you to be a full partner in this ranch. Not just my wife, but my equal in running the operation. The horses will be yours to manage as you see fit, and we will split the profits accordingly." Tears filled her eyes. "You would do that. It is not charity, Kate. It is good business and simple fairness. You have proven yourself a dozen times over. And more than that, I want you to know that you have value beyond just being my wife. I want you to have independence and security that nobody can ever take away from you." She threw her arms around his neck and held on tight. "How did I get so lucky?" "I think we are both pretty lucky," Isaac said, kissing the top of her head. In March, Theodore Marsh sent word that the divorce hearing was scheduled for April 15th. Martin Crawford had finally been served with papers, and his response had been predictably ugly. He was contesting the divorce on every possible ground and had hired an expensive lawyer from San Francisco to fight on his behalf. "He is trying to drag this out," Theodore wrote in his letter. "He knows that time is on his side, that the longer he can delay, the more difficult your position becomes. But I have good news as well. I have secured statements from 3 former servants in the Crawford household who are willing to testify to the abuse they witnessed. With their testimony and your own account, I believe we have a strong case." Kate read the letter twice, her hands shaking. "He is really going to fight this." "Let him fight," Isaac said. "You have the truth on your side and you have witnesses. Theodore is a good lawyer. He will win this." But as April approached, Kate grew increasingly anxious. She had nightmares about Martin finding her, dragging her back to Sacramento, locking her in that bedroom again. Isaac would wake to hear her crying in the night, and he would go to her door and speak softly through the wood until she calmed. "I am here," he would say. "You are safe. He cannot hurt you anymore." And Kate would press her hand against the door from the inside, imagining she could feel Isaac's presence through the solid wood, and slowly her breathing would steady. The night before they were scheduled to leave for the hearing, Kate could not sleep at all. She finally gave up around midnight and went downstairs to make tea. She found Isaac already in the kitchen, staring into a cup of coffee. "Could not sleep either?" she asked. He shook his head. "Kept thinking about all the things that could go wrong tomorrow." Kate sat down across from him. "What if the judge does not believe me? What if Martin convinces him that I am lying? Then we appeal. We fight until we win. Kate, I am not giving up on this. On us." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together." She held on to his hand like it was an anchor. "I am so afraid of seeing him again. What if I freeze? What if I cannot speak? Then I will speak for you. Marion will speak for you. Theodore will speak for you. You have an army behind you now, Kate. You are not alone." They sat there in the quiet kitchen until dawn began to lighten the sky, holding hands across the table, drawing strength from each other for the battle ahead. The courthouse in Sonora was a substantial brick building that seemed designed to intimidate. Kate felt her courage faltering as they climbed the steps, but Isaac's hand was steady on her elbow, and Marion walked on her other side like a protective shield. Theodore met them in the hallway outside the courtroom. "Crawford is here with his lawyer, Henry Blackstone. Blackstone is known for being ruthless, so prepare yourselves. He's going to try to paint you as an ungrateful wife who abandoned her husband." "Let him try," Kate said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. "I know the truth." The courtroom was smaller than she expected, with wooden benches and a judge's bench at the front. Martin Crawford sat on the opposite side of the room with his lawyer, and the sight of him made Kate's stomach twist with fear and rage. He looked exactly as she remembered. Handsome in a cold way, with steel gray eyes and a cruel mouth. He was dressed impeccably in an expensive suit, projecting an image of respectability and success. When he saw her, his expression hardened into something ugly. "All rise for Judge Samuel Parker," the bailiff called, and everyone stood as the judge entered. Parker was in his 50s, with a weathered face that suggested years of outdoor work before he took up the law. He looked over the courtroom with sharp eyes, and Kate felt a flicker of hope. This was not a man who would be easily fooled by expensive suits and smooth lies. The hearing began with opening statements. Theodore laid out Kate's case clearly and concisely. A pattern of abuse spanning 2 years, multiple witnesses, medical evidence of injuries, and finally the attempt to sell her to a brothel that had prompted her flight. Blackstone's opening was exactly what Theodore had predicted. He painted Kate as an immoral woman who had abandoned her lawful husband, a troublemaker who was making false accusations to avoid her marital duties. Then came the testimony. Kate took the stand first, and her hands shook as she swore to tell the truth. Theodore led her through her story gently, giving her time to compose herself when the memories became too painful. She described the beatings, the verbal abuse, the night Martin had told her he was selling her and she had realized she had to run or die. "And where did you go when you left Sacramento?" Theodore asked. "South. I walked for 3 days until I reached Jamestown. I found shelter at the Double V Ranch, where I have been living and working since September. And during this time, has Mr. Crawford made any attempt to contact you or reconcile?" "No. According to your inquiries, he reported me missing but did not seem particularly concerned about finding me. I believe he was more worried about the embarrassment of a runaway wife than he was about my well-being." Blackstone's cross-examination was brutal. He questioned every detail of her story, implied she was exaggerating or lying, suggested that she had been having an affair with Isaac and had invented the abuse to justify abandoning her husband. "Is it true that you are living in Mr. Vance's home?" Blackstone demanded. "I am living at the Double V Ranch, yes. His sister also lives there and I have my own bedroom. But you and Mr. Vance have formed a relationship, have you not?" Kate lifted her chin. "Mr. Vance has been kind to me, as has his sister. They gave me shelter when I had nowhere else to go." "That was not my question. Are you romantically involved with Isaac Vance?" Theodore stood. "Objection. Mrs. Crawford's personal relationships after leaving her husband are not relevant to the question of whether she was abused." "On the contrary," Blackstone said smoothly. "They speak to her character and her motives for making these accusations." Judge Parker considered. "I will allow it, but get to your point, Mr. Blackstone. Mrs. Crawford, I will ask again. Are you romantically involved with Isaac Vance?" Kate looked at Isaac, who nodded encouragingly. She turned back to Blackstone. "I love Isaac Vance, and he loves me, but we have maintained proper distance out of respect for the divorce proceedings. Whatever relationship we hope to have in the future will only begin after this marriage is legally dissolved." "How convenient," Blackstone said sarcastically. "You run away from your husband, take up with another man, and then try to claim abuse to justify your behavior." "I claimed abuse because I was abused," Kate said, her voice rising. "I have the scars to prove it. I have witnesses who saw what Martin did to me, and I have every right to seek happiness with someone who treats me with kindness and respect after 2 years of hell." "Your Honor, the witness is being argumentative," Blackstone said. "The witness is being honest," Judge Parker said dryly. "Move on, counselor." The servants came next, 3 women who had worked in the Crawford household and had left their positions after Kate disappeared. They testified to screams heard from the bedroom, to bruises they had seen on Kate's arms and face, to the morning they had found her unconscious at the bottom of the stairs after Martin had pushed her. Martin's face grew progressively darker as each woman spoke, and Kate could see the rage building behind his eyes. This was the Martin she knew, the one who appeared when his control was threatened. Finally, Martin himself took the stand. He was smooth and convincing, painting himself as a respectable businessman whose ungrateful wife had abandoned him for no reason. He denied ever striking her, suggested the bruises came from her own clumsiness, claimed the servants were lying out of some misplaced loyalty to Kate. "Mr. Crawford," Theodore said during cross-examination, "you stated that your wife left voluntarily. Is that correct?" "Yes. She walked out in the middle of the night without a word, and yet you reported her missing to the authorities. I was concerned for her safety, naturally. Concerned enough to report her missing, but not concerned enough to actually search for her. Theodore let that hang in the air. Mr. Crawford, is it true that you told associates you were planning to sell your wife to a brothel owner? Martin's face flushed red. That is a lie. I have a signed statement from a business associate who heard you discussing the transaction. Then your witness is mistaken or lying. Theodore smiled thinly. I see. Mr. Crawford, could you please explain the marks on your wife's wrists that 3 separate witnesses described as consistent with rope burns? I have no idea what you are talking about. You have no idea why your wife would have rope burns on her wrists. My wife was prone to melodrama. Perhaps she inflicted them herself for attention. Kate felt Isaac tense beside her, saw his hands clench into fists, but she laid her hand on his arm, silently asking him to stay calm. This was exactly what Martin wanted, to provoke a reaction that would make them look unstable. Theodore called one final witness, Dr. Charles Whitmore, who had treated Kate shortly after her arrival at the Double V. He testified to the injuries he had documented, the pattern of healing bruises, the cracked ribs, the signs of sustained abuse. In your professional opinion, Dr. Whitmore, could these injuries have been self-inflicted? Absolutely not. The injuries I documented were consistent with someone being struck repeatedly over an extended period. The cracked ribs in particular would have required significant force. When all the testimony was complete, Judge Parker called for closing arguments. Theodore spoke passionately about Kate's right to live free from violence, about the clear pattern of abuse documented by multiple witnesses, about Martin's obvious lack of concern for his wife's well-being. Blackstone countered with arguments about the sanctity of marriage, about wives who abandoned their duties, about unscrupulous women who made false accusations. And then it was done. Judge Parker adjourned the hearing and said he would render his decision within a week. The wait was agonizing. Kate threw herself into work, training horses until she was too exhausted to think. Isaac stayed close, always ready with a word of encouragement or a steady presence when the anxiety became too much. On April 22nd, Theodore's telegram arrived. Divorce granted. Stop. Judge ruled in your favor. Stop. You are free. Stop. Kate stared at the telegram for a long moment, unable to believe it. Free. She was actually free. Martin Crawford had no claim on her, no power over her. She was Kate Dalton again, and she could choose her own future. She found Isaac in the stable, and she walked straight up to him and kissed him with all the pent-up love and joy and relief flooding through her. He caught her in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. We won, she said between kisses. Isaac, we actually won. I told you we would, he said, setting her down but not letting go. I told you that you had an army behind you. And now, Kate asked breathlessly, what happens now? Isaac dropped to one knee right there in the stable, holding both her hands in his. Now I do this properly. Catherine Dalton, you are the bravest, strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. You saved my foal and you saved my heart. Will you marry me? Yes, Kate said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He stood and kissed her again, and in the background one of the horses nickered approvingly. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Jamestown with half the town in attendance. Kate wore a dress that Marion had sewn, simple but beautiful, and she carried wildflowers that Isaac had picked that morning. As she walked down the aisle toward him, Kate thought about that night 7 months ago when she had collapsed in his stable beside a newborn foal, certain she had reached the end of her story. She had been so wrong. That night had not been an ending at all. It had been a beginning, the first page of a new chapter written in love and hope, instead of fear and pain. Isaac looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world, and Kate knew she had finally found what she had been searching for all her life. A home, a partner, a love that would weather any storm. "I love you," she whispered when she reached his side. "I love you too," Isaac whispered back. "Always." The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional, but when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Kate felt something fundamental shift in her soul. She was Kate Vance now, and she was home. The wedding celebration lasted well into the evening, with food and music and dancing. Kate danced with Isaac until her feet hurt, and then she danced some more because she could not bear to let go of him. When they finally returned to the ranch house late that night, Kate paused on the porch and looked up at the stars scattered across the black sky. Somewhere up there, she liked to think her father was watching, approving of the man she had chosen and the life she was building. "Ready?" Isaac asked, offering his hand. Kate took it, lacing her fingers through his. "Ready." They crossed the threshold together, and Kate closed the door on her past forever. The years that followed were full and rich, marked by the changing seasons and the endless rhythms of ranch life. Kate's reputation as a horse trainer grew beyond Tuolumne County, and people came from as far as San Francisco to buy animals from the Double V breeding program. She and Isaac worked side by side, their partnership as strong in business as it was in love. Dawn, the foal Kate had helped birth that first night, grew into a champion exactly as predicted. She won ribbons at every county fair she entered, and eventually became the foundation mare for a new line of horses that bore Kate's distinctive training style. In the spring of 1881, Kate gave birth to their first child, a son they named James after Isaac's father. The old man held his grandson for the first time and declared him perfect, then passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 weeks later, content in the knowledge that the Vance line would continue. A daughter followed in 1883, dark-haired and serious like her mother, with Isaac's warm brown eyes. They named her Marion after Isaac's sister, who cried when they asked her permission. Kate sometimes thought about Martin Crawford, wondered what had become of him after the divorce. Theodore sent word that Martin had left Sacramento shortly after the hearing, disgraced by the public testimony about his treatment of his wife. Kate felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a distant sadness for the man he might have been if he had chosen differently. But mostly she did not think about Martin at all. The past was past, and her present was too full of joy and love to waste time on old pain. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Kate back to the stable where he had first found her. Starlight was still there, older now but healthy, and Dawn was in the next stall with a foal of her own. "You remember what I thought that night?" Isaac asked, his arms around Kate's waist as they watched the horses. "I thought I was finding a woman who needed saving. And instead—" Kate prompted, leaning back against him. "Instead, I found the woman who would save me, who would make this ranch thrive, who would give me children and laughter and a reason to be grateful every single day." He kissed her temple. "I found my home that night, Kate. You were my home all along." Kate turned in his arms to face him. "We saved each other," she said softly. "You gave me a reason to live, and I gave you someone to live for. That is what love is supposed to be, I think. Not one person rescuing the other, but both people choosing to build something beautiful together." They stood there in the stable where their story had begun, surrounded by horses and hay and the comfortable smell of home, and Kate thought about that desperate woman who had stumbled into this place 7 years ago. That woman would barely recognize the person Kate had become, confident, successful, deeply loved. But some things had not changed. Kate still woke early to check on the horses, still got dirt under her fingernails and hay in her hair. She still found peace in the steady rhythm of ranch work, still felt most herself with a lead rope in her hand and a horse at her side. And she still remembered the feel of Isaac's coat around her shoulders on that cold September night, the first act of kindness that had begun to thaw her frozen heart. "Thank you," she said now, standing on her toes to kiss him, "for everything. For believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself, for being patient while I healed, for loving me enough to wait until I was ready to love you back." "Thank you," Isaac said, "for saving my foal, for saving my heart, and for making every day since that night an adventure I never want to end." In the years that followed, the Double V continued to prosper. Kate's training methods became legendary, and young ranchers came from across the state to study under her guidance. She taught them not just the technical aspects of horse training but the philosophy behind it: respect, patience, partnership rather than domination. 2 more children joined the Vance household, another boy and another girl, and the ranch house that had seemed too large for just Isaac and Marion rang with the sounds of childhood. Kate proved to be as patient and intuitive with children as she was with horses, and Isaac discovered reserves of playfulness he had not known he possessed. Marion eventually married a widowed doctor who had moved to Jamestown, and she built her own home on the edge of the Double V property. She remained Kate's closest friend and confidante, the sister Kate had never had, and their children grew up more like siblings than cousins. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the ranch work was done, Kate and Isaac would sit on the porch and watch the stars come out. They talked about the future, about which horses to breed next season, about whether they should expand the cattle operation or focus entirely on horses. But mostly they just sat together in comfortable silence, Kate's head on Isaac's shoulder and his arm around her waist, both of them grateful for the extraordinary gift of an ordinary life. Kate never forgot where she had come from, the darkness she had escaped. But she also never let that darkness define her. She had chosen to survive, to fight for her freedom, to believe that she deserved better than what Martin Crawford had tried to make her. And in the end, she had gotten so much more than better. She had gotten everything: love, partnership, family, purpose. She had gotten a life worth living, built on foundations of mutual respect and unwavering support. Sometimes visitors to the Double V would ask Kate about Dawn, about the mare's first foal that had become such a legendary champion. Kate would tell them the story of that September night, how she had stumbled across a laboring mare and helped bring a foal into the world, how Isaac had found her sleeping beside the newborn and covered them both with his coat. She would tell them about the kindness of strangers becoming family, about second chances and new beginnings. She would tell them that Dawn represented the best of what could happen when someone refused to give up on themselves or on others. What she would not tell them, what she saved for Isaac alone in those quiet evening moments, was how close she had come to giving up entirely. How she had walked those 3 days from Sacramento not looking for salvation, but for a quiet place to die. How the sound of a horse in distress had pulled her back from the brink, given her one more purpose, one more reason to keep fighting, and how Isaac Vance, with his quiet strength and gentle hands, had shown her that love did not have to hurt. That partnership could be built on equality and respect. That trust was not foolish but brave, and worth the risk of being hurt again. In 1890, 11 years after that fateful September night, the Double V Ranch held a celebration for its 50th anniversary. 3 generations of Vances gathered to mark the occasion, along with friends and neighbors from across the county. There was food and music and stories, laughter and dancing and joy. Kate stood at the edge of the celebration, watching her children play with their cousins, watching Isaac discuss breeding lines with a group of young ranchers, watching the sun set over the land that had become her home. She thought about her journey, the long road from Sacramento to here, and she felt nothing but gratitude. A hand slipped into hers, and she looked down to find their youngest daughter, Sarah, looking up at her with serious eyes. "Mama, why are you crying?" Sarah asked. Kate had not realized she was crying, but she reached up and felt the tears on her cheeks. They were not sad tears, though. They were tears of overwhelming gratitude for a life she had not dared to hope for. "Because I am happy," Kate said, picking Sarah up and settling her on her hip. "So very, very happy. Because of the party, because of everything, because of you and your brothers and sister, because of your father, who is the best man I have ever known, because of this ranch and these horses and this beautiful, complicated, wonderful life we have built together." Sarah thought about this seriously, then nodded as if she understood. "I am happy too, Mama. This is the best home in the whole world." "Yes," Kate agreed, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Yes, it is." That night, after the last guests had departed and the children were asleep, Kate and Isaac returned to the stable one more time. It had become a tradition, this annual pilgrimage to the place where their story began. Starlight was long gone, passed peacefully in her sleep 5 years earlier. But Dawn remained, a grand matriarch now with multiple generations of champions descended from her lines. She nickered softly when she saw Kate, and Kate felt the familiar rush of love for this animal who had been there at the very beginning. "You ever regret it?" Isaac asked, pulling Kate close. "The path your life took to get here?" Kate considered the question seriously. She would never be grateful for the abuse she had suffered, for the terror and pain Martin Crawford had inflicted. But she also could not regret the journey that had brought her to Isaac, to this ranch, to this life. "I regret that I had to go through darkness to find light," she said finally. "But I do not regret where I ended up. Every step, no matter how painful, led me here, to you, to us. And I would walk that road 1,000 times if it meant ending up in your arms." Isaac held her tighter. "You will never have to walk that road again. From now on, whatever roads we walk them together." "Together," Kate agreed, and she knew it was a promise they would keep for all the years ahead. As they left the stable and walked back to the house hand in hand, Kate paused once more to look up at the stars. They blazed overhead in glorious profusion, steady and unchanging, a reminder that even in the darkest night, there was light to guide the way home. And Kate had found her home, not in a place but in a person. In Isaac Vance, who had covered a sleeping woman and a newborn foal with his coat and, in that single act of kindness, had set them both on a path toward healing and hope. Their love story had started with a desperate woman, a difficult birth, and a rancher who chose compassion over convenience. It had grown through patience and partnership, through hard work and harder conversations, through the daily choice to show up for each other no matter what. And it continued now, 11 years later, as strong as ever. Because the best love stories are not about dramatic rescues or instant connections. They are about two people who choose each other, day after day, year after year, building a life together one moment at a time. Kate Vance had been saved that September night in 1879, but not in the way she had imagined. Isaac had not rescued her from her circumstances. Instead, he had given her the tools and support to rescue herself. He had seen her value when she could not, had believed in her strength when she thought she had none left, had loved her through the messy, difficult process of healing. And in return, Kate had given Isaac partnership and passion, had brought life and laughter to a ranch that had been running on duty and determination. She had shown him that strength came in many forms, that vulnerability was not weakness, that the bravest thing a person could do was to trust again after being betrayed. Together, they had built something extraordinary. A home, a family, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. The horses Kate trained would carry her methods forward into future generations. The children they raised would pass on the values of kindness, respect, and hard work. The land they tended would continue to provide for the Vance family for decades to come. But more than any of that, they had proven that it was possible to start over, to escape darkness and find light, to build happiness from the ashes of trauma. Their story was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to the healing power of love, and to the extraordinary things that could happen when someone chose kindness in a moment that mattered. As Kate climbed into bed that night beside her husband, she thought once more about that woman sleeping in the straw beside a newborn foal, covered by a stranger's coat. That woman would not have believed this future was possible. That woman had given up hope. But here Kate was, warm and safe and loved, surrounded by the life she had built through sheer determination and the grace of a good man who had seen her worth when she could not. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness, and Isaac's arms tightened around her. "I love you too," he whispered back, "always and forever." And as Kate drifted off to sleep, she dreamed not of the past but of the future, of all the mornings yet to come when she would wake up beside this man who had saved her by teaching her to save herself, who had loved her by showing her she was worth loving, who had given her a home by making himself her sanctuary. The story that had begun with a coat spread over a sleeping woman and a newborn foal had become a love story for the ages, a reminder that even in the wildest, hardest times, kindness could change everything. That second chances were possible. That love, real love, could heal even the deepest wounds. And that sometimes, the best thing one person could do for another was simply to be there, to offer shelter from the storm, and to believe in them until they learned to believe in themselves again. Kate and Isaac Vance lived long, full lives, growing old together on the ranch they loved. They saw their children marry and have children of their own, saw the Double V expand and prosper beyond anything Isaac's grandfather could have imagined when he first claimed the land. And always, in the quiet moments, they returned to that stable where it all began, to Dawn's stall, where generations of champions had been born, to the spot where Isaac had found Kate at her lowest point and chosen kindness, to the beginning of a story that had become their whole world. They never took each other for granted, never forgot how close they had come to never meeting at all. And they made sure their children and grandchildren knew the truth. That love was a choice, made every day in 1,000 small ways. That family was built on respect and partnership, and the willingness to weather any storm together. And that sometimes, all it took to change a life was one act of compassion at exactly the right moment. When Kate Vance died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 73, surrounded by children and grandchildren, the entire county mourned. She had touched countless lives through her work with horses, her kindness to neighbors, her unwavering commitment to treating everyone with dignity and respect. Isaac followed her 6 months later, unable to imagine life without his partner of 43 years. They were buried side by side in the cemetery overlooking the Double V, their headstones simple and understated, marked only with their names and the dates that bracketed their extraordinary love story. But their legacy lived on in the thriving ranch, in the horses that still bore Kate's training methods, in the children who carried forward their values of hard work and compassion, and in the story that was told and retold, year after year, of the rancher who found a woman sleeping beside a newborn foal and covered them both with his coat, beginning a love story that would span decades and inspire generations. It was a story about kindness and courage, about second chances, and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. It was a story about choosing hope over despair, about building a future instead of being trapped by the past, about two people who found each other at exactly the right moment and built something beautiful together. And it was a story that proved, beyond any doubt, that the smallest acts of compassion could ripple outward in ways we could never imagine, changing not just one life but many, not just one moment but countless moments stretching forward into an unknown but hopeful future. The Double V Ranch still stands today, still in the Vance family, still known for producing the finest horses in California. And in the main stable, there is a brass plaque mounted on the wall that reads, "In memory of Kate Vance, who saved a foal and found a home." And Isaac Vance, who knew that true strength lies in gentle hands and a kind heart. May their love story inspire us all to choose compassion, especially in moments when it matters most. And beneath that, in smaller letters, September 1879 forever.